The Sustainable Development Goals, as you might remember, was decided on at Rio Plus 20. The ambition was to develop goals that go beyond the Millennium Development Goals that should be accomplished in 2015. They go beyond the Millennium Development Goals in the sense that it's the first time that we really embark on handling the challenges both of poverty eradication and the climate challenge and the environmental degradation at one time. They also go beyond the Millennium Development Goals in the sense that this is not a North-South agenda that we are negotiating. This is really a universal agenda. So what we decide on needs to be implemented by each and every country, by Sweden, both nationally and internationally. The discussions, as you also might be aware, started already in 2013. And they started in a very untraditional way for being a UN negotiation. Something that was called the Open Working Group was formed. At the start, it was composed only by 30 countries, but it was open to all the UN members. So at the end, almost all countries in the world took part in these discussions. And it was really more of a discussion than a regular negotiation. And this forum turned out to be very productive. It helped us to reach goals that were much more visionary than we really had expectations to reach. And another reason that those goals could be so forward-looking is that the discussion was open up to the breadth of civil society. Traditional civil society organizations, business, trade unions, academia took part in the negotiations. And in parallel, there was also a broad consultation with the world's population, where the UN, by seminars, by internet, by different tools, reached out to people in about 100 countries. So this year we started the more traditional intergovernmental negotiations. They are not ready yet, but it is obvious that the countries of the UN want to take care of what was really formulated by the Open Working Group. And that is why the proposal put forward by the Open Working Group most probably will be the main part of the package that we are going to deliver. It will consist of goals, means of implementations, mainly coming from the Financing from Development conference, and follow-up and review. And of course, by a political declaration stating the will and the commitment by the international government. As you see, the goals are quite broad. They very well capture the breadth of the concept of sustainable development, economic, environmental, and social. They also have mainstreamed in those 7 goals the perspective of human rights, the rights-based approach, both through the goal of gender equality, through the rights for children and youth, decreasing inequality. You can also find the right to nutrition, health, education. Decent work, the decent work agenda from ILO is also integrated into the goals. And the right to justice, the rule of law, and inclusive institutions. And I imagine that you take special interest in Goal 11 because there's a specific goal for sustainable cities. And this is Goal 11 with its targets. There are 17 goals and 169 targets. As you can see, the targets are making it more concrete, and some of the targets are also delivering the means of implementation for fulfilling the goals. And given the focus of this conference, target 11.7, of course, is of special interest to you. And if you look to this specific goal and compare it with the 17 goals, it's obvious, of course, that there are a lot of cross-references between the different goals. It's also obvious that it would be impossible to fulfill Goal 11, sustainable cities, if you don't fulfill the other goals. But it's just as obvious that you need to fulfill the other goals in order to fulfill goals 11. It's also obvious that a lot of this work of implementation, of realization, the visions that we have, need to be done at the national level, but also at the very local level. A lot of this work will necessarily need to be done by communities and cities. Actually, it has been said in UN that cities are where the battle for sustainable development will be lost or won. And that's obvious if you consider that half of humanity lives in cities today. And in 2030, when the goal should be fulfilled, 60% of the human population will live in cities. And many of you know very well what an unsustainable city planning could do in terms of really worsening the situation for people that are already in problems. Just to mention one example, the right to access to water and sanitation for all is one of the main challenges that many cities meet. It's also needless to say, of course, that major sources of climate change and environmental degradations do have their basis in cities. 60 to 80% of the world's energy consumption comes from cities, and 75% of the carbon emissions. What has been considered as a local or a national matter for a long time is more and more becoming more of a global matter, of course, the way that we use and plan our cities. But of course, there's a bright side of this also. Cities are really where growth and innovation is created. So cities are really also where the solutions for sustainable development can be found and also dispersed to other parts of the countries. And also, when we consider that 60% of the areas of the cities of the world remains to be built before 2030, it's obvious that there are a lot of possibilities to make this in a new and more visionary way. It's also obvious that that cities and communities have an opportunity to learn from each other in this endeavor. One of the things that we are discussing in the UN negotiations now is the review and learning process, where regional peer review and learning is a very important part of this follow-up system. But there has also been proposals to gather together cities that have the same challenges and conditions. For example, cities with harbors could gather together, cities over a certain size. And what you are representing today is really a third way of learning and developing strategies for how to make sustainable cities be realized by this more thematic discussion. With this being said, I'm very happy to see you here, and I wish you all luck in this week.